What's up? What's up? What's up? All right, How It All Works family. We are back with another episode, another installment on the channel, How It All Works. So good to be here. So good to see you back and in place. I already see some of you are shouting your people out. If you have somebody that's going to be on the panel today, we want you to do that. We want you to jump in the comment section, let them know that you're here, and of course, share the video. HowItAllWorks.com, youtube.com/Kirk R. Nugent. If you're watching in our Facebook community, the comments there are not necessarily going to work. So if you want to join and engage in the comment section, in the discussion, especially if you want your comments or questions to be answered by the panel, you need to jump over to YouTube right now. And while you're there, you might as well click subscribe. Today, we're going to be dealing with the topic, all I hear is podcast this and podcast that. We got a panel of podcasters on that literally have been doing this, and together, collectively, they have over 300 episodes of podcasts. So there's going to be some tips, some tricks, some best practices. We're going to get to the bottom of, essentially, how it all works. Without any further ado, let's get it. Okay. Welcome everyone. The whole crew is here, man. Whew, we got a panel today. This is amazing. So what's good, fam? What's good, everybody? How's everybody doing? I see one or two of you still muted, but
we're good.
Yeah, good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. So again, family, for those who are watching, if you're watching this live, you're watching the replay, this is the time to share. This is the time to, just let us know that you're here in the comment section. This is the time for us to be able to engage a little bit. So, as we begin, we're going to just do a quick introduction. We're going to go around the digital room, if you will, starting with Dr. Kalasar, and we are going to make our way around to Denali. So, Jamie K, talk
Hey
to
man,
us.
man, thank you, man. First of all, thank you, Kirk, for having me on this prestigious platform with all these great people. I feel like I'm the newcomer to this, but yeah, I've been doing my podcast for roughly about a year.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of fell off a little bit, but I picked it back up. But I started this nonprofit called Raise Your Voice. So basically, we're social justice content creators.
Nice.
We help people understand what is social justice, how to respond. In a morally and ethically way for their business, for their church, or for just who they are individually. And so, one of the things that I'm passionate about is being out in the streets and in the public. And yeah, that's the big deal. That's me in a nutshell.
That's what's up.
Also, the pastor of City Temple SDA Church.
City Temple out there in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Jamie K, we're so glad to have you on the show. One of the things that we'll dive into a little later is that the topic of your podcast is just as important as the fact that you have a podcast. And I love the topic of Jamie's podcast. Yours is the only one on here that I haven't been on yet, man. I got to figure out a way to rectify that, brother.
Yeah, man.
we gotta get on the show.
Hit the subscribe button, and we'll get you on the show.
Oh, you know it's already done. That's already done. We're gonna get that happening. So next to Dr. K is RK3. RK3, tell them a little bit about yourself and the RK3 show.
Hey, what's happening? Robert Kennedy III, RK3. That's me in the place. And every time I say that, it makes me feel like rapping. I'm getting ready to start doing like some flow. Anyway, I am a speaker, keynote speaker, corporate trainer. My company is Kinetic Communications, and I have been doing the RK3 show, which is actually my fourth podcast. But this podcast we've been doing for about a year and a half. And yeah, we're about almost hitting 70 episodes real soon. But overall, I've done, I would say, podcast episodes probably above more than 150 or somewhere thereabouts.
Wow. So what we see on screen really is just for the RK3 show, but altogether you're doing, okay, that's phenomenal, man. Well, yeah, definitely. We're going to draw from that experience for the discussion today. My good friend Pierre Quinn. This is the guy right here, man. Let me tell you. I have some other stories that I might not be able to share today for Pierre Quinn, but I'm gonna figure out a platform to be able to share some of those at a later date. Doc, tell them a little bit about Leading While Green, and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Pierre Quinn here. I am a speaker, author, leadership coach, and my mission is to help people courageously begin the journey to personal and professional transformation. My podcast is the Leading While Green podcast. It's actually my second podcast as an outgrowth of my first leadership book, Leading While Green. And man, it's been an incredible journey, just sharing stories of leadership in places where you might not think you'd find it.
Amazing. Yeah. I had a chance to work with Pierre on the Activate Your Courage tour, man. That was phenomenal. We had a great time. Kimon Hines, Ideas to Life. Doc, take a second, tell the people a little bit about yourself and the podcast and a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So, Kimon Hines, and what I do is I help people to bring ideas to life. I help people to take action on things they've wanted to do, things that they've had in their minds, on their hearts for a while, and just weren't sure how to do it. And so I do that through my coaching and my consulting business, and also through inspiring people through my podcast. Robert said earlier, this is actually my third podcast. I hosted a podcast for an organization that I work with called Pelk. Then I launched my podcast, and then I relaunched it. And so we're 70 episodes in. And even now I am doing a video podcast with my daughter on helping teens and their parents who want to empower the teens to start businesses. And as you can see, I'm wearing my girl dad shirt that my daughter bought for me yesterday for Father's Day. So.
Proper. Yeah. I love that. I see Pierre's like, yeah. Girl dad's in the house.
Yeah.
I hear that. That's what's up, man. That's what's up. So, Yes, Denise and Oliver Marcel. This is family, y'all. This is family. I'm so glad that you guys are on the show. So glad you're gonna lend your experience to the show as well. Tell them a little bit about Trade Secrets. I absolutely love the title of your podcast. Trade Secrets is phenomenal. Tell them a little bit about that, and tell them a little bit about yourselves as well.
Yeah, so we are Denise and Oliver Marcel of Denali, and we are a relationship and we're a relationship coaching company. And we started Trade Secrets. Actually, we started with, what was the first one called again?
Candid Conversation.
Candid Conversation was the name of our first
Nice
podcast.
We did one season of that, and
Yeah,
then
we
took
did.
a year off.
Yep, we did one season of that, took a year off, and then we came back with the new title, Trade Secrets. And the premise behind it is, in corporations, it's frowned upon when you trade secrets of what your company is doing with a different company. But
Right.
in relationships, we think it should be the total opposites, that
Absolutely.
we should share our highs and our lows. We should share what worked for us and what didn't work for us. And so we named it Trade Secrets. We have phenomenal guests on our podcast that literally do that, tell us about their stories and what worked for them, what they've been through, and what didn't work for them. And so that's how we came up with the title, and that's what we do. We love it. We have about, I don't know how many episodes
I think
now
total between the two, about 37
yeah.
episodes, maybe.
so far.
Yeah, we had put 37 on the flyer,
Mm-hmm.
but I was certain that there was more, man. But thank you so much for just giving folks a little bit of information about you and your podcasts and the different things that you do. Let me just say again, for those who are jumping into the comments, I see that it's going well. We got CJ out here. He's shouting out a couple of people. We got David Hunt here. This beautiful woman is attached to me. She's out there as well. Praise God that your spouse can jump in there. My guy Henry McKechnie. I got to figure out a way to get this guy on the show. Henry McKechnie is here, and we just love to see what's happening in the comments. I see some of our panel members are in the comments as well. That's what's up. So we're gonna dive right in to our first question. And this is, everybody's able to take a swipe at it. So we want to make sure that we're, touching on some points for people who have tuned in or who may be watching this after the fact. And they're like, what is the equipment list that you use? What are the platforms that you use to record your podcast? And has it evolved over time? Is there something that you've upgraded to or that you've shifted from, and what were the reasons behind that decision? So yes, this is let's dive in. Not everybody at once, of course, but how do you record your podcast if you have a guest that's not in the same room or space as you? How do you connect and record, and how do you get good clean audio? And then what types of programs and software do you use to edit it down and to make it into one file to upload to wherever? And then what platforms do you use to distribute your podcast? Is it Stitcher or whichever? So I'm going to leave it open. Yeah.
I can start if before I was using Skype calling to do my interview podcast, and I'd have to pay for Skype calling, etc. But I started using Zoom, and Zoom works really great for capturing video and audio.
Yes.
I tend to do video, to record video, but just post the audio, because I never know. At some point, in my mind, I want to take some of these interviews and at least put parts of them on YouTube and other channels, maybe even put some of the video on my Instagram. So YouTube works great, that it allows you to get both the video and the audio, and it will separate the audio, your audio as the interviewer, from your guest audio, and it'll have it together, it'll have it separate. I take that file that I get from Zoom, actually have to upload it so I can make it into another extension, but then I move that into GarageBand, do my editing there. And then there's a program called Auphonic, a website, auphonic.com, AUPHONIC. that I use to kind of smooth things out, to reduce background noise, to level out things. In case my microphone is too loud, or my guest microphone, if her microphone is too loud, I'll use that program to smoothen things out. And then I host my podcast on Libsyn.com. And then I'll stop there because I'm sure other people have other things to add to the conversation.
Hey, I can jump in because mine is easy. All I have to say is I do the same thing Kimon does.
Right.
And
Right.
the only difference I would say for me is that originally I was hosting my podcast through Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout sending it out everywhere. But as we took a little break, and as life would have it, trying to diminish the amount of monthlies that we had as it relates to Denali and web services and hosting and all of that. So we took it from Buzzsprout, and I went over to Anchor.
Okay.
And it had to be about 2 years ago, maybe it was. I follow Gary V. And Gary V said, man, this thing Anchor is going to be the next big thing. But at the time, it had just come out and it was trash.
It was.
but I got it anyway. And I was like, all right, I'm going to sit on it because this guy, I've been following him for a long time. He hasn't really been wrong about too many things. And over time, as I saw it begin to evolve, I was like, okay, this is a good time for me to jump. And so we haven't had any issues, man, being able to host it there and do some little creative things there as well.
Yeah, same here. Like all the same steps. I use Anchor. Anchor distributes it on all of the platforms. It's just drop and load up and you go to sleep at night. You can schedule it. So, but to edit, I use GarageBand as well. But I've transitioned when I'm doing one-to-one interviews, I'll use Zoom. But I've transitioned now to like a video talk show for two really dope dudes. And so I use StreamYard. And we use StreamYard to record it, and then I download the audio from the StreamYard recording, put it into GarageBand, tweak the levels, add whatever I want to add to it, and then load it up onto Anchor, and I sleep at night.
Nice.
Listen, mine is like that, but I don't use Anchor or Buzzsprout. I use a plugin on WordPress called Blueberry. And I'm sure most of you spend much more time editing your podcast, getting to sound nice more than I do. I'm just like, click. As soon as I'm done recording, I'm bored. Click, let's send it. And I love the feeling of being able to go and say, hey, Alexa, play the latest episode of the Leading While Green podcast.
Nice. We're waiting for you, brother.
So my bad. So
Superstar.
I don't know about that. So you talked about evolving over time.
Yes.
And so my first podcast was 2013, 2014, somewhere thereabouts. And I had the brilliant idea that I wanted to start my very first podcast as a video podcast. Yeah, not a great idea. And trying to do everything live and you see how you're like doing this video introduction now? I was trying to do that like live on the spot using Google Hangouts. So I recorded these video podcasts, had these preset videos that I would kind of share the screen and put everything in, and it was a production, bro. And we did it in Google Hangouts, and then any pre and post or anything like that, any cleanups I would try to do in Audacity, and then I would I actually was being cheap at the time, didn't want to pay for podcast hosting, and so I used something called Podcast Generator, an open source platform that allowed me to host a podcast on my own server on my podcast site. And so, it worked well for a while, but I mean, now I'm at the place where I record here. I do my interviews through Zoom, like some of you do that as well. I don't do the video anymore. I just really do the audio, and Libsyn is my host, and then it distributes it to all of those platforms, as well as some of the social media platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and that's all scheduled. And currently I record some of my pre and post stuff in an app called Sound Studio, which is a Mac app, but I used to use Audacity, and we can talk about equipment, etc. later on. But now I'm at the point where I do that, and then I send it off to a guy, and he puts everything together.
Nice.
I
Nice.
like that. Send it off to a
Nice.
guy.
Hey, that's how you
That's
do
not
it,
a
man.
bad setup.
Hey,
Of
that's
course.
what we aspire to. We need
I
to
know, right?
I'm saying,
We gotta work on that. We gotta
trying to graduate.
Man, you said we'd talk about equipment later, man. Let's hear some equipment. Come on, let's talk some equipment, man. What do people need?
Listen. I'll go first because I've probably got the cheapest, most bootleg setup out of everybody. All right,
Come on, let's talk about it, man.
There was a good number of episodes of the Leading While Green podcast that I was recording in the backseat of my car using a Samson Go mic. Mic is about that big, and that's probably the best audio I've had. I've bought more expensive mics, but that little Samson Go mic in the backseat of my car is probably the best sounding podcast I've ever had.
Wow.
And I'm just too lazy to set up in the car again. So
it's
So
amazing. I love that because what you're also saying to folks is that it doesn't, the bar for entry is fairly low.
super low.
The bar for entry is fairly low. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but content is where majority of your effort and energy needs to go into.
And there,
but continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, and there's so many programs that that fix your audio. But when I was just using my computer audio microphone, my built-in microphone,
right.
Or I just plug in my headphones and just use that. I mean, now I'm using a Yeti mic that I plug in, but it's more like I feel like the value is in the software and how you edit it and how you adjust those levels, because you can get away with, as Pierre said, man, he's in the backseat of his car and all of his podcasts sound rich, like it's in the studio.
It does.
But I mean, the car is actually a really good place, because if you think about it, when you go to studios, what do you see on the walls? You see the sponge, the Auralex soundproofing. When you're at home, you've got walls which are flat, which are symmetric. In your car, you got seat and children. In your car, you've got seats. You've got nothing is really symmetric. The sound is being broken up. When have you heard an echo in your car?
That's true.
Right, and so the car is actually a really good place to get some good close sound.
I hope you're taking notes out there, fam. These are hacks that they're sharing with you. These are golden nuggets that they're dropping on us today. Anybody else in terms of equipment?
I would say, man, just to piggyback off what Pierre was saying, I would tell people, man, don't sleep on some of the lesser expensive mics.
Yeah,
right.
That Samsung, I had one of those, and that mic probably cost $35.
Yep.
And the sound was outstanding with that Samsung mic. So yeah, I would say that. But for us, we do a couple different things, man. The beauty of Anchor is that if we're recording a podcast and it's just the two of us and we don't have a guest, I'm literally laying in the bed with my cell phone because Anchor is so clean. Yeah. Like the sound is so rich, just right into the cell phone. So we would do that. But when we have guests, we're using Zoom, and I use Zoom really because I like to see the people I'm talking to. That's really the only reason why I'm using Zoom.
Yeah.
And for mics, we're using Shure SM48s.
Nice.
We have a couple of those. They were pretty inexpensive, pretty decent sound. And I was running that through the Zoom H6.
Okay.
So that I could do, so I could get some clean stuff. And so I've just transitioned from the Zoom H6. I was under pressure from some folk, man, to mess with this Podcaster Pro. But I did the renegade thing. The Podcaster Pro has a rival, which is the Zoom Live Track L8.
Okay.
And so I actually just transitioned to that. It has a lot of some of the same features as a Podcaster Pro, but it also doubles as a 8-channel mixing board. And because I do some music stuff on the side, that was a no-brainer for me to get, kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
On the side,
the side, right?
Just to pause for a moment. The track that you heard during the intro, that was Oliver Marcel.
Wow,
on the side.
Yeah, on the side. Kimon, it sounded like you had.
Yeah, I was gonna say the microphone I use is the ATR 2100, and the reason I like it is because there's some other mics that I've used before that would pick up a lot more sound in the house. I remember having to record, and everyone had to stay in freeze mode while I was recording because it was picking up so much of the sound, and then it would give a hollow sound. And so this one is sort of like unidirectional.
Yes.
Other stuff can be going on, and you don't hear it as much. You don't hear like the air conditioning in the room.
Right.
You pretty much hear me, and so that's why I like this microphone. It's not that expensive. It's less than $100.
Yeah,
excellent. Nice.
So I hopping on that low cost train here. When I first started recording, I was using some other USB microphones, and then I thought that I was going to upgrade. And when I was getting ready to really upgrade, the standard was the Blue Yeti. Right, I was like, I gotta get it. It just looks beautiful, right? So I said, let me get a Yeti. I got shock mount. I got all the stuff. And I probably, with the shock mount and the boom arm and all of that, I probably ended up spending closer to $300 for microphone stuff with the Yeti.
Wow.
I decided that I needed to do something. The Yeti had on this boom arm here, and the Yeti was a little bit heavy for this. So I said, let me get something else when I was switching my office around. And I was doing some research, and I found this microphone, the Samson Q2U. Right, $60 on Amazon, and since I bought this, my Yeti's sitting in the corner. I just lent it to somebody to fill in for themselves, but I don't know if I see myself going back. I mean, I think like Kimon, the great thing is when you have knowing the difference also between unidirectional and condenser mic, or dynamic and condenser microphones. And the dynamic microphones, when you're around it, you're recording from one direction. If I'm on the side like this, you're not going to hear me as much. But if I'm right in front of it, you get that beautiful radio sexy, right?
Come on.
Right. So
quiet storm.
And so turning down the gain or turning down the input in your computer, if you're recording to the computer, really allows that close feel, that warm sound. So you're not getting all of the room stuff.
Let me. I didn't even realize, man, we're already 25 minutes in. But let's shift quickly to this next question. Just one piece of advice for someone starting out or thinking about starting. What is your number one piece of advice for them? The number one.
Man, this advice, I need to take it for myself. Consistency. I think, when doing podcasts, it's not as easy as just turning on a microphone and just getting on it. You got to be consistent, and you've got to be, consistent. I'll mix it with disciplined, because that's what's going to get your followers and get your, people listening to what you have to say. If you're sporadic and you're doing an episode 1 week and then we don't hear from you a month later, you're going to lose your audience. So it's that staying consistent, having content. That would be my one main advice.
Yeah,
that's good.
I'm going to disagree with Jamie a little bit and then agree with him. So it is as easy as getting on a mic. And that's the thing. A lot of people are held back because they feel like, I've got to have the right equipment. I got to have the right sound. I got to have the right this. I got to get on the mic. Go. Yeah. Just do it. That mic could literally be your phone. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody's got a smartphone with earbuds, right? Use that to start. Plug that baby in, get on Anchor, record your podcast, and get moving. Okay, yeah, so that's true. One. With regard to consistency, yes, consistency is important, and there is a hack for that. If you're anything like me, doing the same thing at every week at the same time, overtime can kind of be boring. So what I do is I schedule 2 Mondays per month where I have a couple of different blocks where I can record multiple episodes. So if I'm recording multiple episodes, then I can release them or I can drip them out regularly, and it seems like I'm there every single week. Yeah. But I'm not. So right now we're about to release episode 67 next week, and we've got 10 more episodes in the bucket already. So I could not record another episode for the next 2.5 months and we'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gold. That's
Hey,
gold.
Did you do 2 RK3? I felt like you did 2. Could you?
It's supposed to be one.
Because that second one was the one I was going to talk about. But that's fine. That's fine. I would tell people, man, you got to get used to talking about what you do.
Yeah.
Don't expect people to be able to listen to something that they don't know about. So you got to get into the habit of, especially as you're trying to build up a listener base and some momentum, of telling people consistently, posting on social media, understanding the algorithms, understanding the different channels, and really promoting. Nobody is going to be more excited about your podcast than you. So you got to get into the habit of being able to push it and promote it for yourself.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
I would say I get to talk about something that I really know about, not just equipment. I would say just do it. I think a lot of times we overthink things. Just to put back on what RK3 was saying, just do it. Get out there and do it. I think for a long time we were just talking about, man, we should really start a podcast. We should really do this. I think this is a good idea. I'm thinking this might work. I'm thinking that might work. Just do it. Just start. The hardest part is starting. So just start. Start with what you have.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Somebody's about to launch a podcast right now.
Yeah.
They needed to hear that. They needed to hear that.
I mean, what else can be said, right? The only thing I would add is for those who are looking to do a podcast, and maybe you're not even having guests and you want to present your own stuff, to repurpose. You have things that you've been talking about, sharing about in different ways, on your job, in the church setting, with your kids, with whoever. And we always think we have to talk about something new that no one has ever heard from us before. But you can take things that you've done before and do podcasts on those things to get you going. So I just want to just add there.
Yeah. And then another thing too is you evolve, right? You figure it out. The more you do it, the more you start figuring out. You find your lane. And so, so I stand corrected. It's easy to get on the mic. Thank you, RK. But stay on the mic. I think
Stay on it. Yes.
Stay on the mic.
And I would say this little 10-second tip right here.
Come on.
Do not, just to piggyback off my wife, she was talking about overthinking as it relates to getting started. I think often people overthink as it relates to how the level of importance of the content that they want to share.
Right.
Somebody wants to hear about how to make oxtail.
Yes.
Somebody wants to hear about how to take their marriage. Somebody wants to hear about how to change the oil. Somebody wants to hear about everything, no matter how nonsense you might think it is. Talk about your stuff. Just to take a piece out of RK3, he talks about your story, man. Tell your story.
Yeah,
come on.
Your story deserves a stage. It just
Talk about boy. Oh boy.
I'll be preaching.
The plug your hustle section is later on. No, that's gold right there. That's gold right there. I know Lenore Jones is in the comments section, and so when I heard you say somebody wants to hear how to make oxtail, I just thought maybe Lenore might, she might just. This is your gifting, Lenore. Anyway, we want to just take a quick little, I guess, commercial break, if you will. We want to share with you what we got coming up next week on the channel. The title of of our next episode is Voice, the First Instrument and Broadcast. Voice, the First Instrument and Broadcast. And we've got a panel: Anthony Perkins, Damian Malone, Audrey Johnson, David Person, and Alvin Chia. They all have worked in various capacities in communication, but mainly in radio and voiceovers. And they are going to speak with us specifically about those industries. How many know that voiceover industry is $4 billion market? It's a $4 billion market.
Let's sign up.
And
right?
And, I mean, just like what RK3 said just a second ago, when you get that mic at the right place, at the right, spot, you get that nice voice. That's what people are looking for. And so if you grew up like I did, mimicking the voices you hear on TV, this is CNN. You might want to jump in next week and check out some of the tips and tricks that these professionals have used to really, work that industry. Second thing we're gonna throw out to the comment section right now, and for those who are watching after the fact, is our show question. in the comments, tell us the name and link to your podcast, or give us the name of the potential podcast that you're going to launch. And we want to add a little thing to this. You've seen all of the different podcasts that are represented on the panel today. If there is one, including up to and including How It All Works, that you would like to be a guest on, throw that in the comment section as well. We want to be able to, hear from you. We want to pull from you, from your expertise and some of your know-how. And I'm certain that some of these folks that are on the panel today would greatly appreciate that. How many people are not looking for guests for their show? Are not looking for guests? No hands are up. I just want you to notice that no hands are up right now. All right. Well, we're gonna play a quick little video on some podcast tips, and then we're gonna come back and talk about some impact stories, and our panel is gonna share that with us. Section, you are responding to us. We've got Megan Ogilvy, whose podcast is Empowerment Point Podcast, and this is a family member of mine. So just a shameless plug right now that if you can do a Google search, go ahead and subscribe, fam. She just put out her first podcast last week, and I'm so proud of her. Megan, love you. Thank you for jumping on the show today. Another is from Anthony Corns, and the title of his podcast is Business Bites. Business Bites. Anthony Corns actually was the winner from our web show for 1 year of web hosting through DreamHost, and we just connected him with the DreamHost representatives, and we're going to make sure he gets that 1 year of web hosting. This is all the reasons why you want to make sure you are subscribed, that you are in the know when we're going live and when we have new content coming out on the channel. We're going to dive into our podcast impact stories. Podcast impact stories. And what we mean by this is what we want to talk to you about the technical pieces. Of course, we covered some of those equipment things, platforms that are being used, the process, the mechanics of producing a show on a weekly or whatever interval. But we also want to talk about some of the impact. And so there's two sides to this thing. Impact for people who were on your show, impact for you as the host, and impact for doors that this show and this platform and some of the conversations that you're having are opening for people out there. Not just for people out there, but specifically for you. If you weren't speaking before, then all of a sudden you have a podcast, and now folks are like, hey, we want you to not only come virtually to speak on my show, but also to speak on our stage. What are some of the ways, and I'm throwing this to the panel, anybody can jump in at any moment, whatever story, and no story is too insignificant. We want to hear what are some of the things that, kind of not necessarily direct, byproducts of your show, but things that have happened that you didn't expect, but you're pleasantly surprised.
I think for us, man, and Kirk, we talked about this yesterday. For us, man, it has just allowed us to meet some individuals and have conversations that we just would not have normally. Yes, it did open some doors. We met some folks through podcasts, and were brought out to Virginia for something based on someone that we met on a podcast interview, and different connections and networking opportunities that have come out of that.
Right.
I think for us, man, the main thing as it relates to impact, man, is being able to listen to people's stories, because our podcast is about relationships, right? So being able to listen to people's stories and listen to what they have gone through, what they've come out of, has been beneficial for us because we're looking at each other and like, okay, we can go another 20.
Yeah.
We got it in us. Even if we didn't think we had it in us for some reason or another, I think those are the two things for us, man, that have come out of this.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. One of the things with social justice and community organizing, the first thing that we do is listen to people's stories. When you hear the stories, you begin to know how you react to or what kind of initiative that you need to do to combat whatever that injustice is. And so doing my podcast, Raise Your Voice, it's been impactful to me to hear the stories of individuals who don't get to talk about things that they ordinarily wouldn't talk about, just to be able to provide a platform for them to raise their voice about a certain issue. And then to know that there are people listening and they'll send me a message and they'll say, hey, thank you. I never knew it was like that for the Muslim community, or I never knew that it was like that for women in ministry.
Wow.
And the other podcast that I do, Two Really Dope Dudes, that's just me and my guy. We're just going back and forth, and to see the comments live and to see that, people are like, hey, that's what I'm thinking. Hey, that's what, I feel the same way too. That's just been the most powerful. So I say the podcast has been helpful to me as an individual, for me to grow and for my development and for what I do in the work that I do in this world.
That's what's
up. My podcast really changed my life in a lot of ways. I started a podcast when I was pastoring a church in Memphis, and it was really for me to have my creative outlet. That was it. I felt like I was doing work for the organization, but I wanted my own thing that I was doing for myself. Well, along the way, one of the things that happened is 4 of my young adults from that church have since started their own podcast. So I look at that as something to see that by me doing that, by them seeing that they've started, their podcasts are doing great, and other people I've helped to get started. And out of that, it started to make me think, I want to do more of the things that I'm talking about on this podcast. And so it really inspired me to step out and launch out into this world of entrepreneurship.
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, in the professional speaking, training, coaching world, the $1 billion industry conglomerate that is, it can be highly competitive. And a lot of times when you are trying to work with organizations to come and train or speak for a major event, they look for receipts, especially if you're not like maybe a super big name with a huge platform. They look for receipts, and those receipts impact the decision making. And I've spoken at several events where the organizers have told me, it came down to you and somebody else, and we listened to a couple of episodes of your podcast. We got a feel for you outside of the speaking platform moment, along with the videos that you did. It really helped us make a decision. And I remember speaking for one event in Chicago, and the person introducing me said, I didn't know much about you after I found out I was going to introduce you, but I just binge listened to about 15 of your podcast episodes. So I really feel like I kind of got a handle on who you are and how you think. And it's a pleasure to hear about your work. So, podcasting for me, I'm not a podcaster. Podcasting helps to drive my business. So it's been great.
For me, the reason that, and here's why I want to say this. There's some people that are scared of launching podcasts because they feel like they don't have information to share. They don't have content. The reason that I started my podcast initially wasn't because I had this burning desire to share something. It was to get closer to people that were in my industry that had more knowledge than I did. So when I started to do that, I wasn't pressured to come up with the information or the content. I would just ask questions and then just listen. Right. And those were my episodes. And I'm sitting there learning, and I'm literally taking notes, and I'm involved in a free masterclass from some of these people just by me connecting with them and offering to interview a lot of them. And I was a guest on an episode of another podcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, and this person said, "Hey, can you share with us something that you said about 3 years ago on the story?" And I had no idea what it was that he was talking about, but he was referring to something that I shared that impacted him in a podcast episode. And here he is bringing it back 3 years later. And he said, that was one of the things that inspired me to start a podcast. And I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
Hey Kirk.
You're giving in my playbook, RK3.
Hey Kirk.
In my playbook. Yeah.
One of the things I want to add is having a podcast allows you to have expertise by association. Like people, you would talk with people on a podcast, interview them. They'll say great stuff, and people give you credit. Like, man, you are an expert in this area.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, it does. You get people say, "Wow, I learned on your podcast." It may not be you that said it, but you get the expertise by association.
One of the things I want to jump in here, take off the host hat for a second, and just be one of the panel members. So last year, was it last year? Yeah, last year I did a podcast tour, and by that I mean I was a guest on I think 25 different podcasts, and 4 of them are on the show right now. But in doing that, what it also helped me to do was it connected my audience with the audience for the people that I was on the show for. There were some merging that took place there. Some of my audience started following these other podcasts and people and brands, but also it gave me access to spaces that I had never even thought were accessible prior to. I mentioned this in our warm-up before we went live to Denise and Oliver, that being on their podcast opened the door for me to speak on marriage and relationships in another instance at another venue. That is not something that I do, but because somebody heard their podcast, they were like, man, some of the stuff that guy shared, he may not be necessarily a relationship coach, but what he had to say, he's very passionate about marriage and about, how we can best relate to one another in that relationship. So these are some of the things also that we can you can also glean as you are not just having a podcast, but also being a guest on a podcast. I think it's important not just to have your own, but to make sure that you're a guest on other people's podcasts as well.
Yeah.
I think was there somebody else that wanted to share something else there? Yeah. What I want to do is we want to grab one more question. We're right at the 2:45 mark, and want to grab one more question, and that is. I was going to ask what do you do to stay consistent, and how often. We already touched on the consistent piece. What I want everybody to share is how often do you produce a show? Do you do it once a month? Do you do it once a week? Is it every day? What's that look like? And especially for those who are just starting out, what did you do when you first started as opposed to what you are at now in terms of your frequency?
Yeah, when I first started with Raise Your Voice, I was doing a lot of interviews, and so I would schedule 4 interviews that week, or try to 2 a week and then 2 the other week, so that I have, I think it was stated earlier, at least 4 episodes for the month, so that I can just upload it like that. Right now, I'm doing a talk show called Two Really Dope Dudes, and we are on live 6 p.m. every Saturday. So every Saturday, get on the computer, 6 p.m., and we're doing our talk show. I take the audio from that, download it, edit it during the week, and by Monday morning, it's up as a new episode on all the platforms.
Nice.
We may be the delinquent folks in the bunch. I'll go ahead and own that.
No.
Our goal initially was every week. That was our goal. That goal got kind of stretched to every 2 weeks. And then after the first season of Candid Conversations, we took a break. And we went from there into video. And video was way more consistent, but we weren't doing it live. It was video that we were just posting to YouTube every Tuesday. So that was weekly. But we missed the podcast space. So now comes Trade Secrets, and we are still kind of toying with what the right setup is in terms of frequency.
Right.
So we actually took a break. We're taking a break this summer. But as we take a break, we're doing what many of you said is building up interviews, so that when we do hit, we got a nice little collection.
There you go.
We can pull from. So
which we had done that.
We did that. We did that with Trade Secrets in the beginning. Before we launched, that was the goal. We were like, okay, before we launch, we need to have at least 5-6 episodes, so that we can just continue to churn out as we interview. But that's been a struggle for us because we had a lot of irons in the fire.
Mm.
So just trying to whittle it down to and hone in on some different things is where we're at this point.
Yeah. I guess I'd agree. No, you're not the delinquent one, Oliver and Denise.
No, that's me.
That would be me. No, I think when I first started, I was doing every week. In fact, my first week on my podcast, I did 5 days a week, and then I went to every week, and I was knocking it out, kept consistent for a while. And then, one of the things that I'm glad I did is I did seasons, so I could like schedule a break when I needed a break. Just like you, I've picked up some more things, and so it's hard to keep the same weekly consistency. But I have a little library, so I don't feel too bad. And my plan is to, like Robert mentioned, get some help, so I'm not doing all of the things that take a lot of time to produce the show. Which is I really want to encourage people, as soon as you can do that, whether it's a college student, a high school student, a virtual assistant, getting someone to do some of that editing work, so you can do the thing in the podcast you really want to do, which is the interview or just the sharing of the content. I think that helps.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we're Leading While Green took a little pandemic break. Needs to collect itself and get its immune system back up. But that being said, I still have so many interviews batched, ready to go.
Nice.
So when I first started, we were averaging twice a week, and then I went down to once a week. Once a week was like a good flow for me, especially if batching 2 or 3 episodes a week. Not just for me, but for my listenership. I found for me in my area, my space is leadership. More than once a week for me and my brand was a little bit too much. So that once a week where people knew they could consistently check in with me was a sweet spot for me.
Nice. Robert, before you go, I just want to say to the audience, if you have any questions, drop it in the comment section right now, and we'll try to answer 1 or 2 of them before we close out. But yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me that I learned when I first started doing podcasts, especially interviews, I would try to find people and try to record the podcast episodes when they were available, or I was trying to do them live, and that was nuts. It just like my schedule was crazy because of that. So the biggest thing that has allowed me to remain consistent is I know that I'm not doing them live, and I know I have a day and time blocked for recording. My time is Mondays at 2:00. I do 1 episode at 2, 1 at 2:30. Okay, nice. So my interviews are about 20 minutes long or something, somewhere in that neighborhood, and so that's been the biggest thing that's allowed me to remain consistent, having that scheduled and locked in time for recording.
Nice.
And I do once a week, by the way, 1 episode a week.
Nice. So we do have 1 or 2 comments in the comment section. One person was asking, what do you think of shotgun mics? I was trying to find that comment. I can't scroll up far enough to find it. Somebody was asking, what are your thoughts on shotgun mics? Anybody want to dive into that one? The way that the shotgun mic is set up it isn't necessarily going to give you the best output for a podcast, but just wanted to open that up. Did anybody else want to share a little bit on the shotgun mic?
I mean, it really depends. You know what you want for your podcast. I mean, the way that my podcast is recorded would be sacrilege to some podcast your purists, right? Because I pull the audio from Zoom, and it's from a cloud recording, right? And they're like, no, if you want the crispest, you got to do it to the desktop, to your computer, to local. Right. And I'm kind of like, nah, dude, there's actually, for me, I wanted the difference between my voice in the beginning and the interview quality. Yeah. So I like that breakdown, almost the sound of like you talking to somebody on the phone during the interview, but then in the intro and the outro, you've got this warmer sound where I'm connected with you. And that's just a personal preference.
Wow. There's one last question here before we head into the Plug Your Hustle section. And that is from David Hunt. What's the recommended time frame for a good podcast? 20 minutes, half hour, an hour? What's the recommended time frame there?
However long your audience will pay attention.
Yeah. It depends on who's going to listen to it, right? Like I've seen great 5-minute podcasts, and there's some podcasts I listen to that are over an hour, but it's because I want to deep dive. And so I guess the question would be who is the podcast for?
Right.
When do you think they're going to listen to it, and how much do they really want? I do 20 to 40 minutes on mine, but it just depends.
Yeah, and I've even done an hour podcast, and then sometimes I'll even break it up into two. So I'll do a part one and then use the other one as the part two, which keeps the listener engaged because they want to hear the rest of it,
right?
So but it's your content and your audience.
Yep,
content and audience. It's going to dictate a lot of the decisions that you make for your podcast. Content and audience.
Yeah, quick story, man.
Yeah, go ahead. No, please.
As a quick story, I had the experience of being in church one time, and there was a pastor who preached a really great sermon in 15 minutes, and then he spoke for 45 more.
Robert, the next time, just talk to me, man. You don't have to tell me.
Man, just send me a text message, bro.
You call it out, bro. It's me and Cole.
Oh my word! Spoke for 45 more. Have mercy. Have mercy. Well, man, listen. We want people need to know how to get in touch with you. How do they follow you? Where can they keep in touch? We've shared with them the URLs for your podcast, for your websites, but share with them a little bit about you and what your hustle is, what your passion is. You kind of did that a little bit in the beginning, but specifically tell them how they can follow you. This time we'll start in the reverse order. We'll go with Denali.
All right, so two ways. One is the website, denali.org. Everything that we do, you can get from that one location. So podcasts, video series, blog, everything is there. Store, everything is there. Social media, most of these social media platforms is going to be at Denali LLC. So that'd be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can get us there as well.
Denali LLC. All right. Mr. Ideas to Life. Come on.
Yes. So real simple. My name is Hines, and one of the main places you can follow me is on my website, KimonHines.com. And you can also find me, all my social media platforms are my name, Kimon Hines. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and something that I have that I'm working on now with my daughters. My daughters are teen entrepreneurs. We're doing a camp for other teens who want to start businesses. So hit me up on that.
Nice. I love that. We are in that week following Juneteenth where we are supporting Black businesses. Mm-hmm. So family, these are Black businesses you can support. Dr. Quinn, let's hear it.
Yeah, best way to catch up with me is on my website, pierrequinn.com. That's pierrequinn.com. It's got the links to all of my other stuff, and look forward to connecting with you. I got to give you this hack, though. I got to give you this podcast hack before we let you go. It's really important. Some of you are trying to figure out how to get guests on your show. Here's a hack. Go to Amazon, go to books, click on the upcoming releases or new releases. Find the people whose books match with your topic and are coming out in the next month or 2 or 3. They need free publicity. You need guests for your podcast. I've used that so effectively now that I have a publicist that literally sends me books every single month because I've been reaching out. So use that hack.
Wow.
Good advice.
That's almost too much, man. We need to now start charging a cover fee, brother. That hack right there. I almost want to pause and make sure my wife is taking a note because I need to use that one for myself.
I think she put it in the chat.
Man.
She did. Hallelujah. Praise God for the teamwork. Man, that's phenomenal, man. Mm-hmm. RK3.
Yes, sir. My podcast show or website is therk3show.com, but everywhere else you can find me at Robert Kennedy 3 on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find in that way, man. So looking forward to getting connected with people.
Absolutely. Dr. K.
Yeah, simple, man. So my website is raiseyourvoice.academy.
Love
And like everyone else, you can find my books there. You can find the podcast,
Love it.
everything that you need, and where I'm going to be with speaking, events, activism. It's all there on the website. And also, you can find me on Instagram. I put it in my screen name, so it's at Jamie_Colasar, and you can get in contact with me there. So,
Dr. K, we were talking about this before you joined us. We just want to know where can we get the jacket?
oh man, the jacket, man.
All I need to know.
I'll go back by the Goodwill and see if they still have it.
Goodwill. Listen to this guy.
Those rags, man.
Man, listen, I want to say a word of thanks to every one of you for taking some time out on this Monday afternoon to lend your expertise, to talk through the process of podcasting, what you've done with it, how it's impacted your life, how it's impacted others, what doors and avenues it has opened, but also sharing your tips and tricks, your best practices, these hacks, as if you will, allowing people to benefit from your years of experience. This has been a great conversation, and this is what this channel is all about, folks. How it all works. Trying to figure out, a little bit more than the surface level of some of these items that are out there. Media, technology, leadership. I mean, we've got, like I mentioned before, we've got the music episode, I should say, voice episode coming up. Well, voice being the first instrument and the first broadcast. So we're going to be talking about voiceovers and radio, and we got a panel for that, and that's next Monday, same time, same channel. We hope that you take a moment even now to subscribe. Hope that you'll join the community on Facebook and that you'll engage with us. We've got a poll out there right now asking folks what would be the opportune time for us to broadcast the live show. We've been doing 2 p.m. on Mondays. The poll has been getting a good amount of feedback, and the feedback seems to suggest that 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern would be a best time. So go ahead and hit that poll up before we close it this week, because we are going to be looking to make a shift and a change on that. My name is Kirk Nugent. I have the pleasure of being your host on this show, How It All Works, and we hope that somewhere in the course of the conversation today, as we shared and talked together, as we laughed, as we engaged, you were able to figure out a little bit better how it all works. Got a little outro to play, and we'll see you guys in the next one.